Moshi Moshi.
Hello.
I'm Zeb Ramsbotham.
And I'm Annie Ramsbotham.
And we're the Rambling Ramsbothams.
Our journey might be rambling, but we hope this podcast isn't.
And forgive us if you hear some gurgling or some swishing.
Oh, why would they hear that?
Well, they can hear swishing because we're both wearing puffy jackets. And they can hear gurgling because sitting in my lap, it's not my stomach, is my yutanpo.
Yutanpo.
It's a bonus word of the week for you.
So it's like a hot water bottle.
Yeah, yu is just the word for hot water. So you see that kanji a lot when it's talking about like a bath or a bathhouse. Often it'll just have the kanji yu on it. And then tampo, I don't really know what tampo means, but that's what this thing is called.
Like a water, yeah, like the thing, I guess the same thing that you would use for a hot water bottle, but we have this kind of fancy, not fancy one that you just plug into the wall.
No,
Like
it's
an electric.
fancy.
Is it fancy?
Yeah, so the traditional ones, and honestly, a lot of people in America probably know what this is, and not just America, sorry, as Americans. Like a lot of people probably know what this is, so for me, I have like good memories of my mom always had a hot water bottle that she would, it's just, a rubber bottle and you put boiling water in it and then you toss it in your bed. Or if you're like sick and you're not feeling good, it was always like a relaxing, like just a hot water bottle that helped keep you warm. So my mom used one a lot.
But you just reminded me of this thing I haven't thought of in a long time, but we had a ice thing, so I guess the opposite, but
yeah,
it was a bunny shaped one and we called it Boo Boo Bunny.
Wow.
Yeah, if you ever got like a little boo boo.
Little throwback.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what a yutampo is it's just a hot water bottle, but ours is fancy because you don't just put boiling water in it, you plug it in, and it's got some kind of liquid in it, and you plug it into the wall and it heats the liquid up so you don't have to wait for it to boil. And I was telling one of my coworkers about this and she was like, an electric one? And I was like, yeah. And she was
we bought it on Amazon. It's not like it's some mind-blowing thing.
Well, I told her you got it on Amazon, but she was very impressed. She was like, wow. And then she like went to the student and like told him in Japanese. It's like,
oh my gosh.
Like Zeb-san, like,
wow.
has an electric yutampo.
In case you're listening and you don't have an electric water bottle thing for your hands,
yeah,
you
but
should
this
get
one's
one.
also nice because it came in like a little fleece bag.
Yeah, so if you're watching
your hands in there.
Recording that we put on YouTube, which I think we only have we only get like 10 views on those videos, but in case you're watching that, hello, and also you can see Zeb's little hand warmer that he's got in his lap here. Yeah,
so that's just a long way to say sorry if you hear any kind of background gurgling or any swishing because I'm wearing my puffy.
I hope you won't.
I hope I won't either, but anything can happen.
Anyway.
And we're like this because it's December now.
Yeah, welcome winter.
Yeah, and it's kind of finally turning, which...
I feel like this is a weather podcast. Like, we just, every time we're like, oh my gosh, it's so hot here.
No, we haven't had a weather update in a while.
Like, it's so cold here.
But strangely this week, it's actually supposed to, I think it's kind of like the last throes of fall. It's supposed to kind of like heat up again on Saturday. And then we plunged right back into the frigid depths of winter.
The despair. Zeb's not looking forward to it.
No, I don't do... So I actually realized recently I really like the cold because, so some of my sharpest memories are of being like really cold. And I think it's because, there was like discomfort involved. And I was thinking about this because last podcast we were talking about like one time, like when have you, been humbled? Yeah. And a lot of times the most humbling moments for me have been when it's like really cold. And so I have like a fondness for the cold because it creates like sharp memories. And then when I feel like a chill in the air, I can really like remember those things very well.
Just makes you feel alive.
Yeah. And also I really like that feeling of when it's cold, but you're cozy.
Yeah, I like that too.
Like I like when I go outside and I can tell like, man, it's really cold out here, but I'm like really bundled up in my jackets.
Me too.
So like I hate being cold, but I like what the cold gives me. That's an aside.
Wow.
But it's December now, and it's finally getting cold.
Yeah,
so.
And today we're talking about not only the arrival of winter, but we're talking about taking the JLPT language test and also funerals in Japan. So, I mean, this is just some things that happened this week, but I don't know if it's bad to talk about cremation and Christmas in the same episode, but that's what we're going to do. So, But first, you have some fun news.
Yeah, this is fun
Spotify.
news. I'm sure a lot of you all are Spotify users, and you've probably been, getting your Spotify Wrapped and kind of looking at your top stuff. Well, as like podcast hosts, we also get a Spotify Wrapped, where
Oh, wow.
Spotify
well, as
gives us.
podcast hosts, I like that.
We're in the
little aside.
industry, We're insiders.
There's dozens of listeners.
Yeah, it's actually really cool because Spotify gives us like a little recap of a year of growth, which has actually been really nice, and I'll spare you all the like more boring statistics. But the most interesting one is for 21 people, and I'll admit one of them is me, because I listen to the podcast a lot to make sure the audio sounds good. But 21 people, so really just 20 people out there in the world, we are the #1 podcast.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
That is actually very flattering, and I'm very surprised, and thank you.
Yeah, that's like really nice. I can't believe that there are 20 people and we're their #1 show.
Yeah.
Like I don't know.
It makes me feel warm and fuzzy.
Yeah, it's kind of like, wow.
Like I have these invisible friends,
Yeah, and they listen to us. What's wrong with them?
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it's very nice. And maybe like on our Instagram, on our story or something, we can post some of the other statistics. But that was the one that really stuck out. It was kind of like, dang.
Yeah.
So it's really neat. So yeah, we really appreciate you guys listening to our podcast. And yeah, just thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
And you should follow us and write a review and subscribe to us and share us with everyone you know.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, sorry.
Speaking of fuzzy, warm feelings, their holiday season stuff is happening in Japan, and you had a bunch of stuff on winter illumination events.
Yeah, I just kind of jotted down some notes because I thought about it. So we talked about it last year, and we'll probably talk about it more this year. But you probably guessed that Christmas isn't really a thing here in Japan. Like, it is a thing, but not
Yeah, it's like an imported holiday. It wasn't traditionally a thing because 1% of the population is Christian, which we talked about before. So with a bunch of people who are mostly Buddhist and Shinto, Christian holidays like Christmas aren't a big thing, but they did get kind of adopted as a commercialized holiday and also just as like a generic, like less about Jesus and more about just generic happy feelings,
Yeah, also not really about Santa Claus or like gifts. I guess it is kind of the true definition almost of like a Hallmark holiday.
Yeah.
Like it's very marketed as like a date night, and a lot of people do go out and they do something for it, but not really
It's not like
traditional.
special.
And I've also already been seeing a lot of the Kentucky is Christmas commercials trying to sell us. And it's fun. Like you go into convenience stores and you'll see they're selling the Christmas cakes, and you can order your buckets of chicken.
Yeah, if you like seasonal flavors, it's another one of those good times of the year.
Yeah, so it does feel a little bit festive, but not really traditionally like what I think of for Christmas.
Yeah.
But it seems like one of the biggest ways they celebrate kind of the like what we think of as the holiday season is it's kind of the winter illumination season. It's a really popular thing in Japan, and we've talked about it before with going to like the Team Labs things and other things. They really like nighttime illuminations. And in the winter, they're especially popular. And Annie has actually been to Japan's #1 winter illumination.
It's #1, like, based on who you ask. Because I looked this up, because I was like...
This was on the Asahi National News.
Oh, then it's on the internet. It must be true.
Yeah.
But I was trying to look this up, like, what's the #1 Christmas light show, And some things were like, oh, it's this thing in Tokyo, or this thing in Osaka, or... So I don't know how they're really ranking this,
Well, also,
but...
how do you define Christmas? Like, is it specifically Christmas? Like, the best Christmas tree in Japan that's lit up? Like,
Yeah,
this said it
true.
was the best winter illumination.
Well,
So not really Christmas.
I think that I mentioned this on a previous podcast when I was talking about my trip to Gunma, but you're talking about the Ashikaga flower park in Tochigi, which is, it's on the edge of Tochigi. So if you're in Gunma, depending on where you are in Gunma, it's like very close to the border. So you could just hop over and see it if you're over there. But it was actually really cool. It did not give me Christmas vibes, like, at all.
Well, yeah, it's not a Christmas thing. It's a winter illumination.
But it hardly gave me winter vibes because it was really cool. I would go again. But it was at a flower park, and so they had redesigned all of the seasonal flowers as lights. Like, they had all this wisteria that was hanging, but it was purple string lights that are supposed to look like wisteria, or they would have lotus, like a lotus garden, and they had these floating lights as if they were the lotus flowers on the lily pads. And so it was really cool, but it wasn't, I don't know, I don't think of flowers with winter, but I would go again. I mean, it was like 5 million LED lights, and they were set to music. Like, they would like strobe to the beat, and it was really fascinating.
Was it like the weird ethereal?
Yes.
Yeah, so they do a lot of that. Like, I often think about, if you're a longtime listener, which 20 of you are, from last year when we went to, or no, it was this year. We went to Joe's and Kay Onsen.
Oh, yeah.
That was like a really cool winter illumination, and they had the ethereal music.
That's true. It did really set the mood.
Yeah, so they do a lot.
I forgot that was this year. I mean, that was like
February.
10 months ago.
Almost a year ago.
A lot happened.
Yeah, it's just like a really fun time. So if you're coming to Japan in the winter, and that's like what you're interested in, you should definitely look them up because they're all across the country. And it reminds me, it's not as Christmassy, but where I grew up, there was this little place called Tanglewood, and they did the Festival of Lights.
In North Carolina?
Yeah, and it was like very Christmas themed. Tryon does it close to where your family is, and you could see it from the highway sometimes.
Is this like the Tryon one where it's a drive-through thing?
Okay. So Tanglewood's the exact same thing. It's like a holiday-themed drive-through light show. Those
are pretty cool because they're cool because you can see it from the comfort and warmth of your car, but they're also not cool because you're like in a car.
Yeah, you're like in a traffic jam.
Yeah.
Like looking at lights.
And you also, I don't know, if you're sitting in the middle seat of the car, not that cool. Like if you're in the back row with a bunch of siblings, I don't know. I have mixed feelings about it. One, it's cool because you just get in the car and then you don't have, like, everyone's together. You don't have to, like, corral anyone and everyone's in a warm car. But then it also was nice to be able to, like, walk around an illumination show.
Yeah, so in Japan you have to walk around the illumination. And I remember in Joe's and Kay it was so cold.
It was really cold. And do you remember we, like, slipped a bunch of times?
Well, you did. I stayed on my feet.
One time I was laughing at you because you had just slipped like so fast that you couldn't.
But I caught myself.
Did you? I don't remember because as I was laughing, I slipped.
Yeah.
And I hit it so hard. Like it was the kind of like fall that's so fast you can't get your hands out of your pockets.
Yeah. And then like someone else slipped.
Yeah.
And then, yeah.
It was wild out there.
But it was really nice. It was really fun. So yeah, just kind of, it's feeling like the holidays, and then smaller things, like in Korinbo here in Kanazawa, they put up the giant Christmas tree, and it's all lit up, and it's kind of like an Instagram prop. A bunch of people go there and take pictures. And then, of course, in the city, on the main kind of big street road, they put up a bunch of lights on the trees. So the trees are lit up. So it kind of has a fun, festive feel. And I guess across from Omicho, they have their lights there too. So,
do you think we should get KFC this year for Christmas dinner?
I've been like debating it.
Have you?
Yeah, because I guess like as an American, it's a quintessential idea of Christmas in Japan.
That's so funny because it's like a Japanese idea of what Christmas is in America. So then you're like taking it even further.
Yeah, now it's like my idea of a Japanese Christmas. And we could go to the Family Mart and you can like place an order for your Family Mart bucket of chicken.
My goodness.
And a Christmas cake.
I want to do it just to be like, wow, look, we did the like KFC Christmas thing, but do I want a bucket of chicken actually? I don't know.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel. Like I would probably enjoy it because fried chicken is delicious.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm on the fence. Like, yeah, I think I would do it as an experience and get a Christmas cake for dessert. And it could be like a fun thing.
Maybe.
But
I probably would rather just get a Christmas cake. Which my mom, she sent me one as a surprise last year.
Just you? I didn't get to eat any.
Well, she sent it to you too.
I just got to look at it.
As my mother, I would like to claim it as a gift for just special me.
Yeah. So I don't know. We can think about the Kentucky as Christmas.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of what I got for it's just kind of the holiday season.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how to like transition into the next thing that I wanted to tell you about today because it's about funerals and cremation. So it's a bit of a harsh turn from like Christmas festival stuff, but in the least morbid way, I think it's really interesting the way that funerals and cremation is really different in Japan versus I guess what I'm familiar with in America. But I'm bringing this up because today when I was having coffee with my friends, we were talking about how one of my friends is going to a temple for the 49th day after her father-in-law died, and I didn't realize that you do something 49 days after someone dies here in Japan. So it's called the Shijuku Nichi, which is interesting because the kanji is like 49th day, but you would usually say like yonju, I would think, but I guess since it's related to death, you can use shi, the pronunciation for 4.
Yeah, because I guess
instead of yon.
Yeah, that's I guess why 4 is an unlucky number in Japan because it has the same reading as like death.
So just like if you're counting to 49, you would say like yonjuku, but in this context, you can say shijuku nichi. But yeah, so it's a Buddhist observation, but it's a memorial service on the 49th day after someone's died, because apparently in Buddhism, there's a trial in the afterlife every 7 days to determine like whether or not someone can go to, I guess, basically heaven, the pure land of ultimate bliss.
So
and
what's
then
that, 7 times
weeks.
7?
Yeah. So yeah, 7's a pretty important number, which also like Shichigo-san is the like set when you go to a shrine when you're 7, 5, and 3. So 7 in general is pretty special, but
yeah, not just in Japan, but in other cultures too, which is pretty interesting. I don't know why 7 is.
Maybe because it's hard to divide 7. I don't know. Anyway.
Math gets hard at 7.
It's hard. It's hard for me always. But yeah, the 49th day is the final day of judgment. And so then we were just kind of talking about like differences in the whole funeral and mourning process that's in Japan versus in America. So after someone dies, she and her family are Buddhist, and of course, I guess they're also Shinto because they're Japanese. But when her father-in-law died, the monk came to the house like that day, and he stayed at the house for 2 days, which I didn't know. Like
he just slept in their living room?
Yeah, he slept in the guest room, but he would stay with the Butsudan, like the family Buddhist shrine in the living room. During the wake, they had to make sure the candle never went out, which was interesting, I thought. And also, the funeral happens like the next day or 2 days after the person's dead. And in America, I was telling them, well, it would happen like a week or maybe 2 weeks even after, because you have to have time to like get things together.
I guess it depends on the family.
Yeah. I don't know.
I remember with my family, like after my grandpa died, the funeral was pretty soon after, like less than a week.
Less than a week? Oh, yeah. Okay. When my grandma died, it was like 3 weeks after, but she was also cremated, so there wasn't really, you didn't really need to wait as long, or it wasn't, as impending. But the reason why you have to do things so quickly is because there is usually a wake where family and friends can come and actually see the body. And there will be a white cloth over the head, and so you'll, pick up the cloth and have your last look and put the cloth back.
Take a little peek.
Yeah, which is interesting because you're so much closer to death. It made me think, I've never seen a dead body, Yeah,
we didn't do an open casket for either of my grandparents, so yeah, I don't...
Yeah, and so...
Maybe when I was super young, I went to a couple funerals, but I can't really remember them.
All the funerals I've been to, I've never been to a open casket one. And then I've never, of course I'm glad that I don't have any traumatic events where I've seen someone die, but I think it would be interesting to be able to like see the person as kind of closure.
Really?
Well, I don't know, especially when she was talking about, the most interesting part of our conversation was the cremation part. So the funeral, in America, funerals are typically like a single day, kind of like one afternoon thing. And she was saying that it's a multi-day thing. And not always, but you would go to a funeral home and you would stay there for 2 days. And that funeral home would like provide the meals for you. And there would be the ceremony. And then there would also be the cremation later. And then at the cremation, you you don't have to, but you can watch the body go in, and you also, you don't watch it like burn, but you can put things with the body to go into the to be cremated. And so, for example, she was saying that like you could put a favorite hat, or like she knows somebody that walked with a cane and they wanted their cane to be with them. And then my other friend who was there was like, yeah, my cousin, we put tamagoyaki with him.
Wow.
Which is fried egg omelet. Yeah. And apparently he loved egg omelet so much that they put egg omelet on the, like, with his things to be cremated. And so he was cremated with the egg omelet. And so everything is cremated. Yeah. And I didn't realize that, because I was talking about, I was saying, what do you wear to a funeral? And they wear black now because the body is in a white kimono. And I was like, oh, do you just borrow the kimono? And she was like, no, of course not. You buy it, and then it's cremated with the body. I just always thought just the body was cremated,
Well, I mean, I guess it's different if you're, like, seeing the body right before it's cremated.
Yeah, I guess so.
Like, you don't want just a naked body laying on a slab.
No, I like the way that it's more of a family thing where you can put treasured items with the body.
Yeah, I mean, people do that in America, too. Like, some people are buried with certain things.
Yeah, I guess so. Just all the experiences I've had with cremation in America, it's been more, like, clinical. Like, you just decide to be cremated, and then you're cremated. And it's, like, kind of medical procedure. And the way she was describing it, like, the family's there, and then after they're cremated, they bring the body back out, like, what's left, the bones and ashes. And she said it was interesting because the bones were laid out like as if the body was there, like the skeleton was just fully there. And she said,
what's left.
Right, it's just the bones. But she said it was interesting because even her 5-year-old grandson was like, oh, that's grandpa. Like, it was kind of like clicking for him, and it was closure. And then the family will take chopsticks and put the bones into the urn. Yeah. And I guess if you've seen this in anime or something, but
yeah, if you've watched Jujutsu Kaisen,
yeah, that's
true. They do that in, like, episode 1 or 2, because his grandpa dies. That's
true. And it's the only time that if you have, I think in that scene it was sad because it was just him there, but
yeah, he was on his own.
If you're in real life and you're with not just yourself, you'll pass the bones with chopsticks, and so that's why it's taboo to, like, you would never pass food from chopstick to chopstick in a situation.
This is really interesting, but it does make me wonder about how, like, there are a lot of instances where, I've just read about this, where the family, no one's there to, like, take care of the older person. And so then the city cremates the body. So I wonder how they handle this in, like, a situation like that.
Yeah. Well, I guess I was interested that you don't put all the bones in the box. Like, you just put a few from each part of the body. Like, you make sure to get some from the head, the heart, and then, like, down to the feet. But you don't, like, sit there for an hour, like, putting every single bone in. And I thought that was interesting because I was like, well, what else happens? And she was like, honestly, I don't know. Because, you do the ceremony and then you leave, and then they give you the box. But yeah, because I had never really thought about this, but, like, when my grandma was cremated, we just got a box and it was all powder, and I assumed it was ashes. And I was like, yeah, in America, everything gets burned. And she was like, really? Like, how? I was like, I don't know. Fire's just hotter in America,
I mean, it could be.
But no, so actually the bones get ground up, because I Googled this while we were sitting together.
Ground it up.
Yeah, I don't know why I never realized this. But
I just always assumed it was hot enough that everything was just kind of like...
I did too. I thought it was just all incinerated. But yeah, apparently the bones get ground.
But then there is some weird stuff, like, if you've had your, like, hip replaced or something.
I mean, I think they would probably have to take that out.
Yeah, because then you have this, like, titanium hip rod or something from grandpa. Like, what do you do with that?
Well, she said if you are in the room and they've done that, then you'll see that with their bones. Yeah. But yeah, and I guess in the situation where we just kind of received the cremation box, that would have been left out. Because she did have, she had, like, a pacemaker. Like, I'm sure they didn't put that in there with the box. But yeah, it's just really interesting. And then the most important bone is actually this, like, your second cervical vertebrae, which is the bone that's behind your Adam's apple. Because your Adam's apple is, like, just a clump of cartilage, I guess. But the bone that's behind that, in Japanese, it's nodo botoke, which is, nodo is throat, and then botoke, like, it means throat Buddha. I guess because the way your neck vertebrae is, it's supposed to look kind of like a person sitting with their legs crossed, like in meditation. It's a bit of a stretch, but yeah, so that's the most special bone. And you actually will put that in a separate box. Not everybody does it exactly like this, but it's fairly common to have that in a box separate from the rest of the bones. And on the 49th day, after, you know, the cremated bones have been buried on the funeral, you still have that nodo botoke in your home, like on the butsudan, in a special box. And so that's what she was telling me about, was that the 49th day is coming up, so they'll be taking his bone to the temple to kind of give it to the care of the temple. And
what do they do with it?
That's what I said. I was like, do they just have this room of
bones?
These vertebrae? And she was like, I guess so, yeah. Like, it's kind of like you're being buried twice almost. You know, then your ashes and bones, not your ashes, just your bones.
How do you know if they pass the trial?
What trial?
The trial for the afterlife, the 49-day ordeal. How do you know that, like...
I mean, how do you know if anybody goes to heaven? I don't know.
I mean, you don't.
So you don't.
But I just wonder, like, in Japan, does the monk tell you, like, he did it?
Oh, I don't know. I think...
Don't worry, he made it. What if they're like, oh, the omens were not good? I don't think Grandpa...
No, I don't know. I'm sure it's just, like, the priest never tells you, like, well, that was a good funeral, but... Sorry.
But you know...
He's not in heaven.
He was a bad person.
No, I'm sure
I guess everyone kind of knows, you know?
Yeah.
Subconsciously, everyone's like, yeah, well, you know.
Wow. But I just thought it was interesting that, like, there's kind of a built-in period of mourning. Like, it's a 49-day process. And during that time, you know, the body is in the house for the first couple of days. Like, you see it, you say goodbye in person, and then you physically put the remains of the body in the box. And then even after that, you've kept their most important bone in your home, at the altar. Yeah, it's just very interesting.
It is very interesting. I don't know how I feel about the whole process.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's very fascinating, and I guess it's very nice and very reflective. But I just don't know if I'm the kind of person that could, like, really appreciate it, you know?
Well, I guess both of us, we've talked about, like, oh, we're not really that concerned with what happens to us after, like, what happens to our physical bodies after we die.
Yeah, because
like,
I'm just not here anymore.
Right, because they were asking me, they were like, this is morbid, but, like, if you died in Japan, what would Zeb do? Like, does he already know, like, what he, and I was like...
That would be a tragedy if
yeah,
you died while we're in Japan.
Yeah, I was like, it's tragic, but I was like, no, he doesn't have anything set up, you know? They were like, do you have, like, a plot picked out? And I was like, no, because we wouldn't be buried here, you know?
Yeah.
So I told them I would rather just have my body donated or used somehow because I don't need it. And I thought that was funny because they were like, well, yeah, you don't need it, but I don't know. Because I was saying that we don't have a family plot. I know some families do in America, and that's kind of the interesting thing about America is that you do get to choose. Like, you're not just automatically cremated. You can...
Yeah. Like I have two family plots. So one that... Well, I guess kind of. So there's one that's associated with my mom's side of the family, and then there's one that's associated with my dad's side of the family. So I think the one associated with my dad's side of the family would be really easy to... I could definitely get a spot there.
There's a lot of space.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just a private chunk of land, and so they control it, where the other one is, like, owned by the town. And so the other one, I think you have to buy the plots really far in advance, and so a lot of families have bought a little chunk, and they have X amount of space, and so real estate's a little limited. But I don't think I would want to be put in either, you know?
Yeah. Well, that's what I told her. I said I don't want to be the first one at the family plot because we don't have one, and so I don't want to start that and then make people feel like they have to come visit. Because also in Japan...
We can just put you where we put your last rat. Put you right next to the rat.
Just out in the front yard.
Yeah.
No, but I don't know. She said that once someone has died, every month on that day, you go to their grave in Japan, to the family grave. And that
I knew
seems
that there was
like
a lot of family grave visitation, but
it's a lot of commitment. I was like, even if you what if you moved to Tokyo or something?
Well, it's a huge ordeal.
Well, she said no. I mean, at that point, if it's just too far, you have to be realistic. But she was saying that their family grave is really close to their house. So, like, yeah, once a month she'll go pay her respects, bring flowers. So
that's super nice, but so I read a news article about this, like, maybe a few months ago, where it's become a big deal in the countryside because usually there would be, like a family grave site. And then the family is responsible for the upkeep. So they go and clean it up and do all the, like, the lawn care, maintenance. And it's gotten to the point where, just because the way the population is going in Japan and the countryside is getting depopulated, there aren't enough people left to take care of those sites. So they're kind of getting reclaimed by nature. So they're trying to figure out what to do. So apparently, I read, you can request for the body to get moved to like a central location in a city, and then it's
after a certain period of time, or
no, just like you can just do it. Like if you know that your family, like, so traditionally we're from Hokkaido, but now we live in Tokyo, and we can't go to Hokkaido to take care of the family grave. I think you could ask, the local city, could you take the remains and not like a mausoleum, but whatever like the city owns, and they'll store the ashes there. That's
interesting.
But I was reading it's become like a really big deal because sometimes an elderly family member will die and then no one will claim responsibility. And so then the city has to pay for all the funeral rites. I mean, I guess it's an aside, but I guess now knowing like what the expectations are post-death, it makes more sense that
it would be hard
tricky.
if somebody died and you didn't know what they wanted. Because I don't really, not that I don't care, but if it brought somebody more peace to have a physical place to like come visit me, then like fine. But I hope that they don't feel like they have to have that. Like they don't feel like they have to have something to keep up. But
there was I was listening to another podcast, and they were talking about like neuroscience and talking about this girl who is now the doctor. When she was younger and she was a girl, she was at a fair or something, and there was a thing where you could just hold a brain.
Oh yeah.
And she said it really messed her up kind of because she was like holding it and then realizing, like, oh, this used to be like
a whole person.
Yeah, like this is someone's like the idea of who they were.
Yeah.
And so I do think it's interesting to think about being donated to science, and you can kind of maybe inspire someone one day to go on to do something.
Is that why she became a neuroscientist?
I don't think so. I think she said that it was just like a tricky situation because she was talking about how she's never held like a fresh brain, and she was talking about how she doesn't really want to because that seems a little too like intimate be studying someone, but then you're holding their
entire consciousness,
everything that they
depending
were.
On where you think the consciousness is. Yeah, that's pretty weird. I don't know how I feel about that. I would rather my body be donated to science, to be used for something useful, but like what is useful, like
I want to go to the body farm.
Oh, really?
Yeah, where the wolves and stuff can eat you.
Oh, that's interesting.
They do the thing to see how long it takes a body to decompose.
Yeah, and then
so
it's
it can help
with
other scientific, I guess, helping with like crime and stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't need bodies for that anymore. We've probably had so many, but
I mean, I think it helps with that. I also like that it's less pollutants, maybe. Although just my body in general probably has a lot of pollutants in it with all the preservatives and stuff that I just eat.
Well, yeah, I think that's why they stick you in the casket.
Seems worse.
But I guess that's a big issue in America. That not really a big issue because we have so much land, but it is kind of unfortunate if you think about how much land is locked up in just like for dead people. Which I know is a very nice thought, and but you could have put a park there, or you could have a playground or something for the living to enjoy.
It's interesting. Yeah, because I told my friends that I told them about how I went to the funeral with you for your grandfather, and that was a very different experience where it's a full body casket burial. And then I have also the experience of my grandmother where she was just ashes. And I remember my mom and I forget, I guess we had driven in different cars, but we were in the car. It was like me, mom, and grandma, and she was just like a box.
Yeah.
And it was like kind of a heavy box. And I just remember being like, this is so weird because I didn't have any like closure, I guess. I mean, she died while we were
We were in Europe, right?
And so the funeral was once we were back, but yeah, I just remember being like, this is grandma, I guess, you know,
Yeah.
and she was going to be scattered. And my friend was like, that's illegal in most places.
And
I guess
you can't just scatter people.
I guess not.
Makes me think of that show you were watching where the lady really wanted to dump her mom in the ocean. So she's like out on the boat and there's the couple like on a date or something. And she's trying to like dump her mom. Like, whatever that show
just
was.
really killing the mood. I forget that one.
Well, anyway, transitioning from maybe heavier topics, we can talk about your test.
Yeah, I took a test. It was, so if you're familiar with the JLPT, the Japan Language
Proficiency test?
Yeah, I was just realizing I don't actually know what it stands for, but yeah, I think that's right. And there's 5 levels, N5 to N1. And N1 is basically fluent. N5 is
They
very
say N1
beginner.
is like you can manage yourself in like a business environment. So maybe not like fluent, like entire fluency, but yeah, for all intents and purposes.
Pretty fluent, because you have to know thousands of kanji. So there's like the writing, the reading, and the speaking portions, and listening to, I guess. So it's pretty intense. N5 is the lowest level. So I didn't take any test for N5. I was like, well, I'll try to get to the point where I can take N4, which is the second lowest level, and then take that. Nothing happens if you pass N5 or N4. Like, you get a certificate that nobody cares about.
Yeah, kind of nothing really matters until like N2 and N1.
N3, actually, some jobs that are kind of entry level, they will say we require N3, which they're basically saying we require you to have like a conversational level of Japanese. Like, you don't really need to be fluent yet, but you at least need to be able to like talk to people.
Yeah.
So I was thinking, well, if I'm wanting to do N3 one day, I at least want to have the N4 experience. And
yeah,
just
it's good
for
practice.
Like personal, like putting, I don't know, it's kind of like training with biking. Like, I always will ride and want to like push myself, but when you have an event, it kind of, there's a deadline then, and then there's like a reason to train.
Yeah, and it stops you a little from procrastinating.
Yeah.
Or it's just nice to have a goal, like in a season, so you can know.
And it kind of forces you to like train for a certain, like in a certain way. For example, like with the JLPT, I was no longer just like generally studying. I was like, oh, I need to like study specifically on my like reading comprehension, because that's pretty poor.
Yeah.
But so it's all multiple choice, which is helpful. And you have to apply online like months in advance, and they mail you a voucher that you take physically with you to the test site.
Yeah, because you can't take it online, so you have to go to a testing site.
Yeah.
Which...
The test site was pretty intense.
Yeah.
I've never had a test experience in Japan, but like they took it very seriously. When I got there, it was on the 7th floor of this huge conference building, luckily in downtown Kanazawa, so it was very convenient to me. I arrived 15 minutes before the test, which I guess in hindsight was pretty like late.
I don't think so. I think that's I think there were probably just a lot of people that were really anxious, so they were just there super early.
Yeah, I was like one of the last people in the room. So when I got up to the room, and there's multiple rooms in this building, I don't know how many people there were, but I was surprised by how cramped the room was. And I go in, and they're kind of repeating to people, like, make sure all of your phones are turned off, like, make sure everything is under your desk. And I was like, oh, dang, they're, like, already doing the rules. And I went in, and I was kind of looking around, like, where can I sit that will be least disruptive? And the people came over, and they're like, oh, show me your voucher. And so I showed it to them, and there was a number on it, and they're like, oh, this is your seat. And so they had assigned seats, which I was surprised about. And of course mine was front row, so I had to like walk past everyone who had gotten there at an appropriate time, which was
I think it's fine. I think 15 minutes early is plenty
it
appropriate.
It was fine. And then I had to like, sit there with everyone in the silent room while we like awkwardly waited for the test to start. But they also go through and they check your face to make sure that you are the person, because you submit a photo of yourself before you take the test, which is really intense for, I don't know, I guess they're just doing everything the way they would do for all 5 levels. But they came through and they checked my face. Also, they checked that I was still me after every section of the test. So there's 3 sections, and there's a 30-minute break between each section, which is kind of a long break.
That's a really long break.
Yeah.
What do you need 30 minutes
I don't know. Stress out.
Like 10 is, I feel like, plenty.
The whole process was 4 hours, which was...
It's crazy.
Longer than I realized. I don't really know what I expected. I knew that the test... I guess because the first portion is like 40 minutes, the second portion is 55, the third portion is like a 35-minute thing. So I guess in my head, I was like, oh, this will be like a couple hours.
But then you have the breaks.
Yeah, and all the instructions. I just didn't realize a 4-hour thing.
Because you were gone pretty much all day. Like, you left pretty early in the morning to catch the train, and then you're back after, like, sunset.
Yeah, it was pretty wild.
Big day.
Yeah, I think it went okay. I was ill-prepared for the reading comprehension, which I knew was going to be my hardest portion, but I think if I did this again, I would do more practice tests, like, not just studying, but, like, actually doing timed tests, because it's really hard to look at a paragraph and then look at a question and kind of like scan the text for the question, which is essentially what you have to do. Like,
and
you don't
admittedly,
have time to read.
Probably
everything.
Like the thing when you're living in Japan, you're using the least.
Yeah.
Like in our day to day, we hear a lot of Japanese being spoken. We speak a little bit of Japanese to people we see out and about. You read like a little bit of Japanese, like on signs, or maybe you get like a piece of mail and you have to like
my
read
reading
it.
is really poor.
But
and
very
I was
rarely,
realizing that.
Yeah, we very rarely read like, oh, here's a paragraph.
Yeah.
And read this. Because at that point, I'll just pull out my phone and like translate it.
Well, especially because if it's in a real life setting, there will be so much kanji that I don't know that I can't read it. But I really should at least try to read. But yeah, that's, hindsight is 20/20. But the listening portion was the last thing. And I actually think I did pretty well on the listening portion. Like, I felt like I passed that one. The other sections, I was like, I don't know if I passed those sections. But also, luckily, you don't really have to get a very high score to pass. You just kind of...
Yeah, it's like the lower the rank is, you only have to get like 50%.
Yeah, it's
something.
Pretty ridiculous. So, I mean, hopefully I pass, because...
But also sometimes, I mean, just reading online, you would read stories where, someone going for like the N2 or something, they've taken the test like 6 times. And then if you think about it, that's like 3 years of taking the test.
Yeah, because you can only take it twice a year.
Yeah, they do it once in the winter and then once in the summer. So, yeah, at best you're doing it twice a year. So it's kind of like, dang. Like,
and you don't have to, there's no rule that says you have to take like N4, then N3, then N2. Like, you could just walk in and take N1 if you want to. Bold, but yeah, but if you do take them one by one, I guess that's like 2.5 years minimum, because you have to do it on a 6-month cycle if you wanted to do it one by one. But so yeah, next time I would practice more reading comprehension. The website unagibun.com had a practice test that was really helpful.
Like eel literature.
Yeah, unagibun is actually like kind of a grammar concept that I was reading about that I don't have time to get into right now because I also don't understand it completely, but
that's okay.
unagibun.com/JLPT-online is specifically the URL.
Now, is that a / or a /?
It's forward.
Okay.
But yeah. Anyway, they were helpful because it times it automatically and then it grades it automatically. The one thing I did not appreciate about it, which I can't complain about a free resource, but they don't let you go back to see what you got wrong, just what the grade is. So it was helpful. I would use that again. But the other thing I would do is I would bring a watch, because I don't think I told you this, but they actually did not have a clock in the classroom.
Which is insane. Okay,
you know what the more insane thing is? They actually did have a clock in the classroom that was covered with a sheet of paper. But, like, why would you do that? I don't know why they covered the clock.
Maybe they were worried the clock's, like, wrong?
Well, they were, like, synchronizing their watches. There were, like, 3 test proctors, and they were taking it very seriously, and they would, like, point at each other, and, like...
Like train conductors?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Let's get this train going. I have heard stories that one of the issues, it was at a testing site for the national, like, college entrance exam. There was something wrong with, like, the clock. And so everyone got a do-over for the entire day.
Wow.
Because the clock, the proctor finished, and it was something like 10 seconds early or something. And so they just did a do-over. Because they were like, oh, we messed up the testing protocol.
Interesting.
We gotta do it over.
I mean, 10 seconds is, like, kind of a long time, I guess, if depending on how much
you're gonna fail anyway if you needed that 10 seconds.
Well,
if you were
I guess if you're like right on the line and it was one question difference, I don't know. So that was the number one thing that caught me off guard. That I
thought surely they'll have a clock in there.
I did too.
When you asked me if I had an analog watch, because we wear smartwatches,
yeah,
so I don't own an analog watch.
Kind of on me for not realizing until the day of, like, oh, I need a watch.
You know what this is?
What?
It's just they're supporting the dying analog watch industry.
I know, those poor analog watch
They're trying
makers.
to get you to go out there and buy a G-Shock or whatever the company is to keep them in business.
Yeah. Well, it was a pretty interesting experience, and it was nice that I was just doing it kind of for personal curiosity, because there were some people in there that were, like, really stressing about it. Like,
I know, you told me some stories about some people that were really having a tough time.
Like, when I was leaving, first of all, I was super claustrophobic to get out of that building, because all 40 people in my room tried to exit the one tiny door, and then we were, like, met in the hallway with all the other classrooms that were also exiting, and we all had to get down this one flight of stairs, like the one hallway staircase, you know, and we were on the 7th floor, so we were just walking down. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm almost there, I'm almost out of the building. And then I finally got out of the building, and I was like, okay, I've been in that building for like 4 hours, I can finally breathe. And this person came up behind me and was like, oh, excuse me, did you just take the test? And I was like, yeah, like thinking maybe I forgot something. And she was like, on the last question, you know, the one about like the cat meowing, what did you put? And I was like, oh, I was like, I don't remember, and also I don't think I had a question like that. And then that was the wrong thing to say, because she was like, oh no, I think I totally like misheard it. And I was like, no, you're fine, like I'm sure it was fine, no problem.
But so from what I read online, I do think the tests are the same across the board. Because there were a lot of people that were talking about apparently one of the katakana words on one of the higher level tests was like demigod.
Oh.
But of course it's like demigogu or something.
That's a hard katakana word.
Yeah, but they put it, and so people were like, there were a lot of people online making fun of that, because they were like, what the heck was that? They were like, when does anyone ever use that? Like, I've lived here for years and I've never heard anyone like say like demigogu. Like,
were you also talking to me about, like, speaking of strict proctors, like an N2 class?
Yeah, so one of my New Year's resolutions is I'm going to stop reading stuff on the internet.
Okay, that's a pretty broad New Year's resolution.
No, like social media. But because I'm still doing it, and I'm like sometimes bored, and I'm just reading stuff. You read
fascinating, unuseful, but interesting facts.
Yeah, a lot of tidbits. Like there was someone talking about they were in a testing center, and apparently there was a question on the N2 test, and it was about a cafe. And the question included a little bit of cafe BGM, or background music. And it started playing over the loudspeaker, and the head proctor stopped it.
Like, as part of the question?
Yep, it was as part of the question. Like, in the background of the listening section, there was some, like, background music.
Yeah.
So the head proctor stopped it, apparently, and accused someone's phone of going off. And so then they convened with all the other proctors, talked about it, went out in the hallway, talked it out, and then came back in, and they were like, all right, we're going to reset. We'll start over. So they started the whole thing over, like just the listening portion.
Oh, okay.
But apparently this was question like 4 of 6 in the listening, so they had to listen through the beginning. And then the music came back, and the head proctor stopped it again and accused someone's phone of going off again.
Oh my gosh.
And apparently at this point, everyone in the test room was like, it's the test.
Yeah.
The test is making, and apparently she like didn't believe them.
Or
and
didn't
so
want
she
to
shut
admit
it down,
she was wrong.
And they brought all the proctors together again. They talked about it. And apparently, she didn't want to admit that she was wrong. So then at this point, they said, there's an unidentified source of music.
Okay.
So they're going to need to bring in a different device.
Oh.
So apparently at this point, they brought in like a normal CD player. And the person was making fun of it because they were like, I was kind of towards the front. And even sitting towards the front, it was hard to hear. So apparently there were people at the back of the room that like probably definitely could not hear.
Oh,
like,
that's awful.
Yeah, he said it was like a terrible situation. But the head proctor was like, because there was an unidentified source of
switch the music
noise.
Playing device.
Yeah, we got to switch it.
Wow.
So that sounded like a train wreck.
Yeah.
But so you didn't have to deal with that.
No. My proctors were strict but reasonable. In fact, I forgot to tell you, we did kind of have a mishap during the beginning of the reading comprehension, like the middle portion. So you like get handed out the test documents, which all have your name on them. Like, your test booklet is your test booklet. It's so interesting. And then, they like look at their watch. They like count the seconds, and then they like point at each other, and then they're like, you may begin, and everyone like can open the book. It's really strict. And so we had like just opened the book. We're like 10 seconds in, and the proctors are kind of like whispering, and then all of a sudden she's like, sumimasen, like, chotomate, and she like had everybody wait, and then she was like, she had like allowed us to begin a minute early, I guess, and so she had everyone put their pencils down, but like the test booklets were just open, and they didn't tell us to close, so I could see people kind of out of the corner of my eye, like looking around kind of the corner of their eye, like, should we close the booklet? So we just kind of could read that first page for like a free minute until they let us like pick our pencils up again.
Had a free minute.
I still probably didn't really help me, but
well,
anyway,
a wild experience.
It was. If you've taken the JLPT, let me know how it went.
Yeah, or if you took it in this batch, you
Yeah.
can we'll share our results, because I think you get them in
like
the end of
February
January or February.
It's so long.
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, on a brighter note,
Yeah.
do you have a word of the week?
Yes, so my word of the week was a word that I found while I was studying. It's yaoya, which is a grocery store. And if you look at the kanji, it's 800 store. And it really confused me because the question was something like, where do you buy groceries? And one of the options was like, vegetable store. And I was like, that seems right.
Because it's also funny because now people would just say super.
Well, yeah,
like,
you could use
the super.
like katakana or something.
I've never heard someone call it the yaoya.
I haven't either, unless you're in kind of a more traditional like market type area and they're calling it this word. But yeah, apparently these market type grocery stores were originally called aoya, like aomonoya, as in green things. The same way that like shingo, like ao shingo, is a blue green light.
Yeah.
They were like blue green things.
Yeah.
Anyway, eventually aoya was then combined with the word for like countless things, like 800, as in just a number that's too big to count.
We just have so many things.
Yeah, there's a religious connotation with like 800 gods or something, countless gods, but yeah, so countless things is yaoya, and so if you see the kanji for like 800 store, it's a grocery store. Yaoya.
Fascinating.
Thank you. What's your word?
So mine is samuzamu.
Samuzamu.
Yeah, samuzamu.
Like chili?
Yeah, it's basically like cold, but the second cold, instead of samu, they give it the z, so it's samuzamu, and it means like wintry.
Oh.
So we're on the cusp of some
samuzamu season?
Yeah, some samuzamu. So we almost have some wintry weather. Like we can see the faraway mountains are now capped in snow.
Yes.
So it's slowly coming our way. So yeah, it will be samuzamu soon.
Oh, well, yeah. Thanks for listening this week to our rambling about lots of different things. I hope it wasn't too morbid, but
yes, hopefully good.
Yeah.
But
and let me know again if you have any reflections on your own JLPT test experience or any questions, and you can email us at ramblingramsbothams@gmail.com.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.